Hey guys, what's up? It's Deniz from Deniz World of Bodybuilding. I hope you enjoyed the video we made in the last weeks with Jerry Brainum. It was a three-part video. You can all watch it on my channel. It's live now. And today we want to talk about another interesting topic. I think not that many bodybuilders mention it, but it's probably, that's a topic every human being is related with. On the whole planet, everybody has a connection to that topic, and that topic is sleep, actually. So I prepared some questions, and also some of my viewers asked me some, questions in prior, which I will ask you now. So, Jerry, we can just start with the first one, and the first question is sleep more important for fitness athletes or, bodybuilders, strongmen, or athletes in general than for the average human being with no sports activity? Let's say the average Joe.
Right. I would say it's equally important, but there is a special need for athletes and those engaged in exercise, because there's an adage in bodybuilding that your muscles don't grow when you're working out. They grow when you're resting. And if you look at some of the things that happen in the body when you're sleeping, for example, just to give you one off the top of my head, growth hormone, which of course everybody knows is an anabolic hormone, that peaks in the first 90 minutes of sleep, what they call stage 4 deep sleep. That's when you secrete the maximum amount of growth hormone. And of course, growth hormone is very important, whether you're an athlete or a bodybuilder or anybody in general, but particularly for people that are trying to develop added muscle and strength. That's just one aspect. There's other aspects having to do with certain peptides or proteins that must be in balance. Like, for example, there's one called Ghrelin. Ghrelin is what they call a growth hormone ligand, and meaning that it actually can lock on to growth hormone receptors in the body and stimulate growth hormone. But that's a secondary effect. The main effect is that it stimulates appetite. So when you eat a meal, the ghrelin level goes down very low, and then in the hours after the meal, it gradually goes up. When it gets to a certain point, that's when you feel hunger. So ghrelin is the key hunger hormone in the body, right? Now there's another protein secreted from lipocytes or fat cells. That's called leptin. Leptin has an opposite effect. The way leptin works is leptin transmits a signal to the appetite center in the brain, which basically turns off your appetite, because it's basically telling that would be the hypothalamus of the brain, that the fat cells are full. In other words, they have enough fat in them, so you don't need to eat. That's the way the body is concerned about energy storage. So if leptin is at a good level, the appetite is turned off. Now the problem when you sleep is if you don't get enough sleep. Let's say you get 4 or 5 hours sleep. What happens is you get an imbalance between ghrelin and leptin, where ghrelin goes up, leptin goes down. So the net effect is you're going to be much hungrier the next day. And this is the reason why, and this is in some of the recent studies, there's a definite relationship between lack of sufficient sleep and insulin resistance and onset of obesity, both of them. So you could see this would affect an athlete, and it would affect anybody off the street. You see, people underestimate, and it's coming out more and more in the popular press, the media. They underestimate the importance of sleep. I mean, I run across people all the time who say to me, well, I only sleep 4 or 5 hours and it's enough for me. It's not enough. There are scientists think there's some outliers, they call them outliers, that can actually get away with less sleep. But generally speaking, these are rare. And if you don't get enough sleep, sooner or later, you're going to pay the price. And there's even more severe problems. They've recently discovered that, without getting too technical, they discovered that not enough sleep is very, very bad for your heart. It causes damage to what they call the endothelium, which is the lining of blood vessels. And if you have damage to the lining of the blood vessels, that means that your blood vessels are not going to produce enough nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, of course, everybody knows, well, most people know, it's made from the amino acid arginine. Nitric oxide, among other functions, dilates the arteries and also, keeps your blood pressure in check. So if you follow it through, if there's damage to the endothelium, the lining of blood vessels, two things happen. You get atherosclerosis, which leads to heart attacks and strokes, and you also get, in many cases, high blood pressure because you're not manufacturing enough nitric oxide. See, of course, if you exercise, you can counter that to quite a bit, because when you exercise, the stimulation of blood flow, it's called the shearing effect. It's running through those blood vessels. As it passes through, it kind of stimulates the endothelium to produce nitric oxide. This is one of the health benefits of exercise. See? So my point being, to answer your question in one sentence, I would say sleep is equally important for just anybody off the street, but it also has a special importance for athletes and bodybuilders, because if you don't get enough sleep, I'll give you a flat sentence, you're not going to fully recover from the workout. Because very, very simple statement, you grow when you sleep. That should be enough for anybody involved in bodybuilding to know that you grow when you sleep. And if you curtail your sleep, you're going to definitely inhibit muscle growth. You also, by the way, in relation to hormones, when you don't get enough sleep, they've showed in studies with young men, like 20 years old, just one night of lack of sufficient sleep lowers, and these are guys that have the peak levels of testosterone for their entire life, because testosterone peaks in a man between the ages of 18 and 20 in most men. So imagine, these guys are producing their max amount of testosterone, but if they go one night with insufficient sleep, let's say 5 hours, the testosterone drops 15%, just one night. And at the same time, again, this is relevant to athletes and bodybuilders, the cortisol level goes up. Now, cortisol level elevated is bad because not only does it cause destruction of brain cells in the hippocampus, which is the memory and learning section of the brain, but it also, again, a lot of bodybuilders know this, it's a catabolic hormone. Yeah. It breaks down muscles. Yeah. So, and again, I've given several reasons why athletes and bodybuilders need to pay special attention to sleep.
Great answer. I think that's a great answer for also bodybuilders, athletes, but also the average Joe on the street.
Absolutely.
Like you said. Yeah. But it's great that guys like you do lots of research on this and, do studies on that and on your newsletter, and people can actually read that are maybe not, that much into medicine
right
otherwise and stuff. Okay.
You see, the thing is, Deniz, the thing about my newsletter is, what I've just told you comes from very kind of technical, complex research.
Yeah.
Technical journals, and it's very difficult unless you have a science background to understand, because they throw in all these technical terms that, again, if you haven't studied it, it'd be like me trying to talk German to you. I don't speak German, or I speak very little. Let's put it that way, And the thing is that in my newsletter, I kind of my job is like a translator. What I do is it's very technical research, and I write it so that, believe it or not, I write it so that it can be understood by a child in elementary school. I don't know what they call it in Germany. It's the first 6 grades here. Young child. I don't dumb it. I'm not trying to say my readers are stupid, but when I make it so simple that they don't have to have any science background to understand it, and they get the benefit of knowing this research. See, that's the advantage.
And it's just $10 a month, so
that's it. $10 a month. It's like, what is it? 66 cents. I think it's 66 cents a day. It comes out to. And here, I don't know. I heard that people don't read newspapers anymore. But the last time I looked, the daily newspaper here in Los Angeles, it's called the LA Times. I believe it's thin. Yeah, but I believe it's up to. I think it might be $2.75 per issue each day.
Yeah.
Imagine a newspaper, and I'm giving like a ton of practice. You're not going to get much out of reading a newspaper, but when we read a newsletter, I tell people it can actually save your life. It could save you all this money in supplement sales and all that. I mean, it's a great investment, seriously. Yeah. If I say so myself.
Yeah.
I wish. I know this sounds funny to say. I wish I had a resource like my newsletter. When I was in bodybuilding competition, it would have saved me a lot of headaches. I really do. None existed, though. All you had was the bodybuilding magazines, which, weren't that accurate. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case, yeah. So let's get to the second question.
Uh-huh.
Leading up to the first one, is there a general ideal sleep range let's say for the average guy and for the, the athlete, or is the amount of sleep, is the ideal amount of sleep too individual? Is it just different for you, for me, for Joe, for, Lara
Right.
and stuff?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good question. And the truth is, based on thousands of observations by sleep scientists about the way sleep affects the body, they've come up with an ideal amount of sleep for most people is between 7 and 8 hours. 7 and 8 hours. Now, some people, I should add, actually need more sleep than that. In other words, the famous scientist from Germany, Albert Einstein, he made a statement once that he said that his brain didn't work unless he got 9 hours of sleep a night. A night. In other words, he felt he needed more sleep. There's a lot of people like that. Some people can get by with a little bit less, but I'd say the minimal, in my opinion, for really good health and all the benefits of sleep is 7 hours. In other words, I was going to say 6, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
And it has to do with that recent research I talked about. If you want, I could talk about it a little later, but it has to do with something they discovered in the brain. They called it the glymphatic system. If you want, I can explain that either now or later on, but this is a recent discovery, and the problem is that you really need a full night of sleep for that to function properly, and it won't function on 5 or 6 hours sleep. And the glymphatic system of the brain, I'll put it very simply, this is your housekeeping system of the brain. This is your brain. You have to understand, it accumulates debris, let's call it abnormal proteins build up in the brain, things proteins that need to be broken down. They accumulate in the brain during the day. One of the functions of sleep is to clear out all that crap that's built up in the brain. And the way it does it, and this is the recent discovery, is through what they call the glymphatic system. They call that, and what the glymphatic system simply is, you have the cerebral spinal fluid that surrounds the spine. At night, it actually goes into the brain, and it's like a water cleaner. It basically cleans out all that stuff, the abnormal proteins, including the proteins that cause diseases like Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
Because if you don't clear out these proteins, like there's one called beta amyloid 42, and there's another one called tau, TAU, if these things accumulate in the brain, you're going to get Alzheimer's disease, see? So, they're right there. I mean, for no other reason. If the sleep didn't do anything else but that, I would say that alone is important for sleep. So to answer your question again, in one sentence, I gave some extra detail there, but in one sentence, 7 to 8 hours is best for the vast majority of people. 7 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
And I just want to add though, just to be complete, they have something in science called hormesis. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but what it means is there are activities and substances can be beneficial up to a point, but if you go past that point, they reverse and now become toxic. For example, exercise. If you get the right amount of exercise, you stimulate muscle size and strength. If you go too much, you start to reverse and you lose muscle. That's just one example.
Yeah.
Certain nutrients. If you take certain nutrients, you stay healthy, you provide the body what it needs. If you take too much, now you can get a nutrient toxicity. Well, it turns out that sleep has that too. If you get too little sleep, let's say I'd say 6 hours, it's not going to really make most people, let's say 5 hours or less, or if you get too much sleep, which would be over 10 hours, sleeping over 10 hours is associated with increased mortality from heart disease. So too much sleep is no good either. There's got to be a fine line. In other words, what they call the sweet spot, which is 7 to 8 hours a night.
Yeah. I also think when you sleep too much, you're actually waking up tired.
Absolutely true. Listen, it happens to me a lot. A lot of times I'll oversleep, and I swear to you, when I get up, I am so groggy. I felt like I've had an hour's sleep. I have to have like 4 cups of coffee. It takes me about an hour to wake up. Definitely true. Yeah, that's a paradoxical effect. You would think it would make you feel really good to sleep more. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Before going to the third question, I have one question that I have to deal with, the last few days. Let's say, Jerry, you sleep one day, only 4 hours, okay?
Right.
and to get up to that, the other day you sleep 12 hours. So you have like an average 8 hours of sleep. Can you actually do things like that? That, you know, is there like a storage thing?
No, basically,
Okay.
but the good news is that if you, let's say you get 4 hours of sleep one day,
Yeah.
and the next day you get, let's say, 8 hours, which is the normal amount,
Okay.
well, now you've kind of brought your body back to normal. In other words, you don't have to go to 12 hours. The
Okay.
extra sleep above 8 hours is not going to do anything. It stops at about 8 hours. So all you'd have to do is get one night's sleep afterwards of restorative sleep. And there is another option too. It's not quite as good as getting a full night of sleep. If, for example, you're so busy or something happens where you can only get 4 hours of sleep, if you could take naps of no more than 30 minutes. So it's a very important. You got to keep it to 30 minutes. You will actually prevent some of the negative things that normally occur from lack of sleep. It doesn't, again, it's not as good as having a full night's sleep, but it'll prevent a lot of those negative aspects I talked about earlier if you take a 30-minute nap. But believe it or not, more than 30 minutes is just like getting too much sleep.
Yeah.
If you nap more than 30 minutes, it's going to actually interfere with your sleeping at night. Now you're right back where you started. See, it's not good. So if you have to set a alarm or something, you know, just keep it to 20 to 30 minutes. I usually, if I take a nap, which is very rare, but if I do, I go for 30 minutes.
Yeah. I tried that for a while and I really felt good. So my body got used to that after a while. So at night I slept for 6 hours.
Yeah.
And after lunch, I had a specific time of the day where I did like 20 to 30 minutes, like you said, and I felt good.
Well, you know, in Latin American countries, they have something called, I think it's called a siesta, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Where they actually time off in the afternoon. They'll have like lunch, and everybody takes a nap. I mean, this is like a tradition, you know. And then there was a famous American president in the early, around the time of the Korean War. He succeeded Franklin D. Roosevelt. Harry Truman, his name was Harry S. Truman. Harry S. Truman had the ability. This is kind of weird. It must be weird to see this. He would be a very busy guy, so he'd go maybe 5 hours sleep. But he had this way. He could sit in his chair, lean back like this, and fall asleep. By the time his head is back, he's sleeping. That fast. I'm talking a snap of a finger. I don't know how the guy did that, and I've never heard of anybody with that ability. You know, I did have a friend years ago, a roommate of mine, who would, when he'd go to sleep, he would say, "Well, I'm going to sleep." He'd lie down and he'd be out in less than a minute. That amazes me. I've never been able to do that in my life. I don't know how they do it. It's like they have a switch where they can just switch it on and they're sleeping. You know, but
that's an ability too, and also you can probably train that, you know, to sleep fast and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you could.
Get used to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, directly after lunch, you know, you're tired either way a little bit from the food, and so that's a good, you know, and after that you feel really refreshed and stuff. So why not, if you can do it? So the third question is it better to have? Yeah, that's probably with the nap and stuff. Is it better to have all your sleep at once, so during nighttime, let's say those 8 hours, or is it better to split it up throughout the day and night?
Definitely all at once.
Okay.
Again, it's because of the, you know, if you would have asked me this, let's say 6 years ago, I'd say to you, well, you could probably split it up. It probably, as long as you get, you know, the number of hours in. But it turns out that's not correct anymore because of the recent research. They now, again, that glymphatic system I described earlier, that only occurs at certain points of the sleep cycle. So, in other words, it's better to have go for the full sleep. And again, if for some reason you can't do 7 or 8 hours, if you can get a nap in, you know, you still will eliminate most of the negative effects of sleep. But by far, getting the straight sleep is, from a health standpoint and a recovery standpoint, is definitely superior.
Yeah. So the best thing is all in once.
All in one.
Yeah, great. So the fourth question is, and that's something I see in the supplement industry the recent years. Are there efficient supplements that speed up the process of falling asleep? That's like the opposite of the guys you just told me.
Right.
Guys that have problems falling asleep. Yeah.
Right. Definitely there is. There's definitely, and there's quite a few of them. In fact, I made a video a couple of years ago on my YouTube channel. I described my sleep supplement program because, unfortunately, I'm one of those people. I've had insomnia for years. Probably related to these medications I have to take to treat my asthma, because most of them are based on catecholamines like epinephrine, norepinephrine. These are brain stimulants that tend to keep you awake. It's very difficult for me to fall asleep, so I've had come to rely on a lot of these. I don't take any drugs, what they call hypnotic drugs. Those are sleeping pills. I don't use those. I don't like them. They don't make you feel good, and they're very unhealthy. If you use them on a continual basis, they can cause a lot of health problems. They should only be used on very rare occasions. But the herbal stuff works with your body, so it's not going to cause any problems. Although you probably get a slight dependency on them. I'm probably a little dependent on it myself because I've been using it for so long. But to give you reel off a couple of names. Now, what these things do is exactly what you just said. In science, they call it reduction of sleep latency. In other words, it allows you to fall asleep faster, to put it in simple English. And there's a couple of them. For example, the most famous one is probably melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone produced by the pineal gland, which is right here, right between the eyes, right over here. It's a small gland. What happens is during the day, your body takes the amino acid tryptophan and it kind of harvests it, and gradually over the course of the day, it converts the tryptophan into a neurotransmitter of the brain called serotonin. And then at night, when the lights kind of go out, or when there's no bright lights or anything, there's a kind of a signal sent where the serotonin is now converted in the pineal gland into melatonin. Once the melatonin is secreted, what it does is it lowers the body temperature. See, a lot of people don't know to fall asleep, you have to have a slight lowering of body temperature, which is one reason why you should never sleep in a hot room. It's much harder to sleep. Always try and sleep in a cool room, because your body has the signal for sleep for the brain is a lowering of body temperature. The reason melatonin works, a lot of people don't know this, is because it lowers the body temperature, and that causes the signal to the brain it's time to sleep. It kind of tones down a part of the brain having to do with attention. I can't remember it offhand, a certain part of the brain, but that's how melatonin works. But melatonin is one of them. Now, a big problem with melatonin, people don't realize melatonin is produced in very, very small amounts in the human body. So when you take a melatonin supplement, if you're taking, let's say, 1 milligram, you're taking thousands of times more than the body ever produces. Thousands of times more. You see? Now, if you take something like I take, for example, I take 3 milligrams in what they call a time release form. Now, that's an important point. If somebody uses melatonin, always use the time release form, because if you take regular melatonin, your liver is going to break it down in 2 hours, and you're going to pop up in bed. You're going to be wide awake. But if you take the time release, it lasts 6 hours. It doesn't last the full 8 hours. It lasts 6 hours. So melatonin is probably the most popular. There's a number of others that some of them are better than others. Now, I want to tell you that most of these natural substances work by interacting with another neurotransmitter in the brain called gamma aminobutyric acid, or GABA. Most of the pharmaceutical sleeping pills that you have to have a prescription for, they work by also interacting with GABA. Because GABA, what is GABA? GABA is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter of the brain. This is the part of the chemical that relaxes you, calms you down, and basically puts you to sleep. So these herbs interact with the GABA receptor. In other words, to give you an example of a couple of them, there's one called Valerian. Now, Valerian is kind of, I've used Valerian, but Valerian alone doesn't seem to work that well. However, if you take Valerian and combine it with another herb called hops, hops is found naturally in beer. A lot of people will drink like German beer, for example.
Yeah.
A lot of people will drink strong German beer, and after 2
sleep like a baby.
Yeah, they'll tell you, hey, I really slept good. They don't know why. They probably think it's the alcohol. It's not. It's the hops in the beer.
Yeah.
So, but you can take hops as an independent supplement. But what they found, if you combine hops and valerian, now you get a synergistic effect, which does stimulate the GABA receptor. And there's more than one. There's like 2 or 3 GABA receptors, but it stimulates the GABA receptor to the extent that it decreases the latency and helps you fall asleep. And there's a couple of others. There's one called passion flower, which also works with the GABA receptor. And there's, let's see, what else? Let me think. Oh God. I think those are about the main ones. I'd say there's a couple others, but those are probably the better ones. And the thing is that they're good because they'll help you fall asleep, but you're not going to be groggy in the morning. See, one of the problems with melatonin is if you take too much. Let's say you take more than 3 even 3 milligrams is too much for most people. Most people can get by with 0.3 milligrams. That's only 300 milligrams. That's actually the standard dosage. I take a little more than I should, but melatonin, without going into a lot of detail, it has a lot of beneficial health effects related to cancer and insulin sensitivity. It does a lot of things. That's why I take a little more. So I take a little more. The truth is you probably only need 0.3 or 300 milligrams to fall asleep. But the more melatonin you take, the greater the chance of grogginess in the morning. A lot of people, when I've told them about melatonin, they get back to me and they say, well, Jerry, I tried the melatonin, but man, I tell you, I was so groggy in the morning. I can't use. How much did you take? Oh, I took 5 milligrams. So there's the problem right there. They never use melatonin. They're taking that would be equivalent of, let's say, vitamins, where you take two entire bottles of vitamins at once. And that's the amount of melatonin in a supplement compared to how much your body produces in nanogram amounts. That's like billionth of a gram. That's tiny, tiny. So when you're taking a milligram, you're taking a massive amount. Even 300 milligrams is a massive amount. And people don't realize that. So, melatonin, again, if you're going to take melatonin, I say take it time release because for 2 reasons. First of all, it'll last longer. Your body won't break it down as fast. And also, there's less chance of having the grogginess, even with a 3 milligram dose. That's the dose I use. As long as it's time released. Because remember, it's only being released gradually. You're not getting that massive output of them. It's kind of more natural for the body to have it done that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So even let's say 0.3 to 0.5 milligrams is enough.
That's what most people should start out with.
Yeah.
0.3 and if it works, just stay at that. Now, a good thing about melatonin is a lot of people wonder about this. If I keep using it, will it stop working?
Yeah, that's
there's a lot of things that if you take it after a while, they just don't work. A lot of herbs are like that. A lot of herbs work for, let's say, 2-3 months, and if you keep taking them, they don't do anything. So you have to get off the herbs for at least a month or 2 to have them work again, right? Well, it turns out melatonin's not like that. Even if you take it every night, your body's still going to produce melatonin, and you're not going to get any dependence on it, and it's not going to stop working. That's an important point.
That's what I think people want to hear, yeah.
Yeah.
The body's not getting used to it, like caffeine, for example.
There you go. That's a very good example. Yeah. Caffeine, you have something called caffeine tolerance. Yeah. If you drink coffee every day, like I do, I aim for 4 cups a day because what the scientific studies have shown is the health benefits of coffee you can get with 4 cups of coffee a day. If you have any more than that you're not getting any more further health benefits. So I aim for 4 cups a day. However, I got to tell you, if you're looking for the stimulant effects of coffee, if you drink coffee regularly, it wears off. You don't get it after a while. You don't get any stimulant effect. So there, you'd have to lay off the coffee for about at least, I'd say 7 days or more, maybe even 2 weeks. The problem with that is if you've been taking coffee every day, you get something called the coffee withdrawal syndrome, which the main symptom is bad headaches. See, because one of the main way that coffee works is by inhibiting a chemical called adenosine. And adenosine is a relaxing chemical also involved in sleep onset, which, among other things, also dilates blood vessels. See? So if you get off coffee, now remember, you've been blocking this adenosine every day with your coffee drinking. If you suddenly get off it, your body senses it, and you get a massive outrush of adenosine. And what happens is it dilates the blood vessels in the head too much. And when that happens, you feel it as a massive headache. See?
Yeah.
So that's the only problem with getting off coffee.
That's even what I actually heard of a buddy of mine who drank lots of energy drinks and coffee throughout the day, who stopped from one day to another. He had massive headaches, like exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caffeine withdrawals. Now, if you say to me, is there a antidote? Honestly, I wish I could tell you. I can't think of any. You just have to, all you can do is take an aspirin or something to ease the headache. And after a day or so, it'll ease up, maybe a day or two, the headaches will be gone. But there's nothing you could take nutritionally that'll prevent the the caffeine withdrawal syndrome. Nothing I know of.
Yeah. Probably a little, drinking lots of water would probably help a little bit, or
drinking water. And I suspect that if you increase your magnesium intake,
yeah,
that would also help a lot, because magnesium is also involved in the way that the blood vessels react to stimuli. So magnesium tends to relax the blood vessels. See, in other words, so if you increase your magnesium for, let's say, 3 days after you get off the caffeine, it'll probably minimize or maybe even prevent the headache. That's only speculation on my part, though. See, I mean, I drink, I never get a coffee withdrawal syndrome because I drink coffee all the time. So I've never really tried the magnesium, but knowing how magnesium works, I suspect it would help.
Yeah. Great. So that was the one thing. The other question, the fifth question is, and that's what is, that interests me a lot. That's also in the last few years, in the supplement industry. I think Ronnie Coleman had a supplement for that. Yeah. Are there efficient supplements that make you sleep more intense? So maybe you can even reduce the amount of sleep you need that night. You know what I mean? Not feeling asleep faster, but having more intense sleep.
Well, there's no such thing as a supplement that'll allow you to reduce your sleep. Because you see, the way it works with sleep, it cycles. You have stages of sleep, and this happens continuously throughout the night. And, your body, again, because of this glymphatic system, it might not occur till, let's say, the later stages of sleep. Might not happen till a couple of hours. We don't really know that yet. So, you don't want anything that's going to curtail the sleep. And there is no supplement that actually does that. There's no such thing as a supplement that'll allow you to go without sleep. But there was one interesting thing, though. Let's say if you don't go, I didn't mention this earlier, but it's relevant to people that work out. If you go without sleep, I mentioned some of the bad effects related to bodybuilding, like the hormonal effects. Well, it turns out that if you don't get enough sleep, you also minimize muscle protein synthesis. You blunt it. Now, muscle protein synthesis is the cornerstone of muscle hypertrophy or growth. In other words, anything that's going to blunt muscle protein synthesis is going to interfere with muscle and strength gains, right? Now, if you don't get enough sleep, you're going to blunt muscle protein synthesis. But here's an interesting thing. What they've discovered recently is if you do high-intensity interval aerobic training, it actually prevents that effect, only that effect. In other words, if you do high-intensity interval, you know what that is, right? Basically, you do something, you bring your heart rate up very high for, let's say, a minute or two, and then you kind of ease the intensity and bring it down, and you do this continuously for maybe 20 to 30 minutes. That's high-intensity interval aerobics. What they found is by doing that, for some reason, and they don't really know how, but it seems to prevent the muscle protein synthesis blunting effect through a lack of sleep. You know what I mean? You still want to get sleep, but it's good news, because that means that theoretically you could miss a little sleep, and if you do the high intensity intervals, it won't affect your muscle protein synthesis, but because of the effect on the hormones, the testosterone, the cortisol, it's still going to inhibit your gain. So it's not really a solution, I'd say, but it's interesting to know that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. So the last thing was a question or a thing from a viewer I have. That's connected to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Of course, we all know them, and you him personally. And yeah. I mentioned that for a reason. I will mention that later. So I will just read it out for you guys. There is a well-known quote by Arnold Schwarzenegger where he tells people to sleep faster. There's like a motivation video, you know, like a business motivation video and stuff. And that a maximum of 6 hours of sleep were perfectly enough for him. However, he said, and neuroscientists like Matthew Walker, I don't know if you know that guy, Why We Sleep, he said, state that our body needs at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That's more like to stay healthy. Does sleep play a bigger role in bodybuilding nowadays? Are there bodybuilders who emphasize the importance of sleep? So my first thing is that, do you know how long Arnold slept back then?
Well, I never was stayed over his house. I couldn't tell you. I mean, you know, but I'm sure he's telling the truth, especially when he was working on the movies. It's probably when he started doing that because they got very early calls. Some, you know, have to be on the set at sometimes 6 a.m. in the morning. So, you know, that would require you going to sleep very early. I would suspect he probably is telling the truth about the 6 hours. And like I said, you might recall I mentioned earlier about outliers. Arnold might be one of those where he actually can get by on 6 hours sleep. But again, there are people like that. I would say 6 hours, again, is the minimum. 5 hours, nobody's going to get by on 5 hours sleep. But some people can get by on 6. Remember, the minimal optimal sleep is 7 hours. So, you know, 6 hours is only an hour less. And Arnold didn't mention, I know that, I could tell you that when he was a bodybuilder, when he competed, Arnold used to take naps. He would take like a siesta. He would take an afternoon nap of about 30 minutes. And then he would, you know, eat something and then go back to the gym. This is when he was training twice a day. So for all I know, he's still doing that. You know, and if you let's say get 6 hours of sleep like he does, and you take a 30-minute nap, you're okay. You know, your body is meeting its requirements. So I said, even though he didn't mention that, he's probably still doing that. And so again, you know, to complete the thought, again, some people can get by. Again, the outliers can get by in 6 hours. However, even the outliers on 6 hours sleep, if they can take that 30-minute nap, well, then they don't have to worry about a thing. I mean, they're okay. You know, there's not going to be any health deficits, you know. And as far as the bodybuilders today, honestly, when I wrote for the bodybuilding magazines for 35 years, when I interviewed them, I did ask them about sleep. I asked, you know, some of the top elite bodybuilders in the 90s, you know, Dorian Yates and Kevin Levrone, all these guys, you know. I don't know the newer guys. I don't go to the contests anymore, so I can't speak for them. But I can tell you that the top guys years ago always considered sleep very important. And what surprised me was to find out that a lot of times I'd interview them in the hotel, and I'd knock on the door, and their wife or girlfriend would answer and say, well, Kevin's taking a nap, you know, or Paul Dillette is taking a nap. You know, these guys like to take naps. So, and they all emphasize that they knew, even before all this research came on about how sleep affects bodybuilding progress, they knew instinctively that if they didn't get enough sleep, it interfered with their training. Now, the funny thing is, this is the kind of paradoxical thing, is that getting a lack of sleep, you would think that it would interfere with your workout, that maybe you can't train as hard. But the funny thing is, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, you could be dead tired and say, oh, man, I don't want to go to the gym. I just want to lie down. I get that way almost every night, you know. But I mean, I force myself to go, and maybe it's because you're starting to circulate the blood or take in oxygen. But the lack of sleep doesn't affect the workout. This is what they've shown in the science studies. It doesn't affect the workout. I mean, it'll affect the results of the workout because of, again, the reasons I cited earlier. But you can still train hard even on 3 hours sleep. So, but these guys knew that I guess they probably knew that they would grow better and just feel better, and they'd have more mental clarity if they got more sleep. So to answer your questions, most of the top bodybuilders that I knew did ensure that they got about 7 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah. So for the first part of the question, I think that, like exactly like you said, I think it's very, very individual. So if Arnold can get by with 6 hours, doesn't mean that
right.
Joe, I don't know what, from New York
Yeah.
can get by 6 hours. Maybe he needs 8, or maybe
That's
he
right.
needs 7. So
That's
that's
exactly
what
right.
people, they just hear Arnold and they say, when Arnold does that, then I can do that. But just they can just try it.
Well, listen, Arnold was a great bodybuilder. Everybody agrees to that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Arnold, personally, he's the most successful human being I've ever personally known because I witnessed him. I met him less than 2 weeks after he arrived in the United States from Europe, and I saw him go from a guy who showed up with a suitcase and nothing to what he is today. I mean, he did it all on his own. You got to credit him. But here's the deal with Arnold. I also saw over the years about maybe 20 different people train with him. I trained with Arnold, not all the time, but we trained certain body parts together, like legs and arms or something like that. But I can tell you that these guys use the same exercises as Arnold, the same drug program. Arnold was very open. In other words, the guys he says, "You want to? Here's what I take. You could take it too." He didn't even try. He wasn't one of those guys that hid anything. And yet, not one of these guys, not one. I'm not saying they look bad. Like Ed Corney, some of the guys he trained with look very good. But not one of these guys ever came close to looking like Arnold or equaling what he did. And it's the same thing with the sleep. In other words, you can't go by Arnold. Arnold, what works for Arnold works for Arnold. It doesn't mean it's going to work for anyone else. That's the bottom line. See? That's what people have to understand about all these. They have all these YouTube videos of some of these bodybuilders, and they're talking about how they train their arms and this and that. It's useless. I mean, seriously. I mean, if you're a fan of Mr. Olympia or whatever, and you want to see how he trained and maybe get an idea for your own workout, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're watching these videos, and let's say a guy like Phil Heath, and Phil Heath is explaining his arm routine, and you think if you use Phil Heath's arm routine, you're going to get arms like Phil Heath, you're in dreamland. You could take the same exact drugs as Phil Heath took. You're still not going to look anything like him. People have to understand that. And this actually usually applies to the younger guys who are just starting out. The guys that have been around know this. This is like nonsense. That they already know this. Most of those guys, if they look at that stuff, if they look at it, they'll look at it out of curiosity more than anything else. They don't even, like me, I don't pay any attention to that stuff. But the point is, some of the younger guys still don't understand that everybody, again, this relates to the sleep too, is an individual. And like you said, certain individuals can get by with less sleep than others. I might need 8 hours sleep. You can get by on 7.
Yeah.
It's no difference. If our health could be equally good because we're meeting requirements. Arnold, again, a couple of outliers, maybe they get by at 6, and they're just as healthy as we are. So again, it's very individual, But generally speaking, based on all the science and everything we know about sleep, 7 to 8 hours seems to be the ideal amount for most people.
Well, I also think, that I agree. And what I also think is lots of people say that back in the golden era, also guys like Arnold, they always emphasize that they trained like 5-6 hours a day. And I think I don't know if I talked with you, but you said that you never saw those guys train that long at once ever. So
never happened. I was in the original Gold's Gym. Like I said, I trained all the time with Arnold.
Yeah.
If I didn't train with him, I was in the gym the same time as him.
Yeah.
His workouts were about an hour.
Really,
now,
1 hour?
Yeah. Now sometimes he would come in twice a day. So there's 2 hours. Let's say 2 hours a day. But 5 hours never happened. Never happened. Not once. I never saw that. I see Arnold himself saying this in videos.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I trained 5 hours, and I'm thinking, Arnold, where the hell did you train 5 hours a day? Now listen, I didn't see him train when he was coming up back in Germany and Austria. He might have trained 5 hours back then because he didn't really know what he was doing. That's possible, but not here in the United States. No. Nobody trained 5 hours. Nobody. I trained when I was a kid. I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I was 14 years old. I was training a gym in Manhattan. And just like I said, I used to follow the routines in the magazine. And there was one routine by a Mr. America I followed. It took me 8 hours to finish the routine. 8 hours. I'd go right from school to the gym, and I'd leave at 10 o'clock at night. I'd take the subway back home. I was living in New York. I was actually training 8 hours a day. When all the other teenagers were having fun and, I was in the gym for years. All my teenage years, I spent gyms, 8 hours a day. But I had no idea what I was doing. You know, I mean, I had no idea. Now when I look at it, I said, I must have been nuts. I didn't know it, but I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. So, that happens.
Yeah, so I also think that you always, always have to look on things from a distance.
Yeah.
But sometimes some people, even themselves, like Arnold said himself with the 5-6 hours, they say it, but doesn't mean that it was true,
Yeah.
or they just say it to, to look more dedicated for the outside people who don't know it.
Right. I think Arnold's trying to give the message he's trying to send is that it takes, sure, I look great, but it wasn't easy. It takes a lot of work, and if you say something like, well, Arnold, how long did you train? How long was your average workout? It was an hour. Well, that doesn't sound very impressive. A guy could say, let's see, if Arnold built that physique in an hour, maybe, I could look like Arnold. I mean, what, an hour? That's nothing, Yeah. So he says 5 hours. Now the guy says, oh, okay, now, I see why Arnold looks that good, because he spent 5 hours in the gym. No, he didn't.
Yeah.
I've seen Arnold say that, but every time he says it, I burst out laughing. It's so funny. I've never seen that. Never.
Yeah, it didn't sound realistic, but
No,
I think, like you said, the people who are believing it, they're like the very, very young guys who saw video on YouTube and stuff. So
I'll tell you, Dennis, I've seen some videos that just are hysterically funny. I mean, there's one guy, I don't remember his name, but I just came across him accidentally. He makes videos on male movie stars. Any male movie star that gets in shape, he right away speculates what steroids they use. Every single male movie star who gets a little bit of abs, might have no muscle anywhere. Oh, when he took Trembolone, it's the most ridiculous, stupid video. Anybody who knows anything about steroids or anything about how people look on steroids would immediately turn this guy off and say, this guy's a maniac. He's out of his mind. What these guys do, the actors start out kind of like average guys or maybe on the thin side or whatever. Sometimes they have to play like He-Man or Superman roles. So they hire a trainer and they eat. You see them interviews. They talk about how they had to force food down.
Yeah.
And the trainer will train them really hard, like 2 hours a day for about maybe 6-7 months. By the time then the filming starts, and these guys kind of look like bodybuilders, but they haven't taken any drugs. They've just trained. They started at a very low base. It's just like any beginner who starts lifting weights will make the most rapid gains. Anyone, I don't care who you are, male or female. When you first start training, you're going to make a lot of gains.
Yeah.
But after a while, it tapers off. See, and that's the way these guys are. They're starting out from a very low base, so they could put a good amount of muscle on. But this jerk says, they're on Trembolone. And just, I feel like punching the guy. It makes. And then he's talking about something about in the golden days. There's one video I saw. I didn't watch it though. He says something about they were using 10,000 milligrams of testosterone. Get the hell out of here. What I know what Arnold used and those guys used. I was around. I didn't use it myself, but I know what they used. Let me tell you something. The steroid programs the guys used back then in the so-called golden era would be laughed at today. The guys today would call it a baby program. They were nothing. They were nothing compared to nothing. That's why guys like Arnold are still alive, because they didn't go crazy. The man's 72. I think he's 72 years old. I mean, he doesn't look like he did when he's a body, but he's still walking around. I mean, he never got sick. He got a heart problem. That was genetic, though. Yeah. I mean, the guys today, they'll be lucky to make it to 60, much less 72, the way they're taking these drugs, So my only point is that, I mean, you are a guy who tries to present solid information, and I'm just talking from me, from whoever you interview. People have to understand you got to be real careful with a lot of these YouTube videos, because take it from me, I've been around for a long time. They're utter nonsense, most of them. Most of them are just garbage. Just laugh at them, And there's another guy, I don't want to mention his name because I don't want to make any enemies, but his delivery drives me crazy. I can't listen to this guy for a second. He talks like this. So he got a test steroid. You're going to take steroid? Now, anyone who knows this guy knows who I'm imitating, because that's exactly the way he talks. That guy's voice, I want to slam my head into the wall. My God, that's guy. What is wrong with this guy? Why can't he talk in a? I mean, I get enthusiastic. I talk fast like I'm doing now. But this guy's yeah. He's what? I mean, his voice is crazy. I mean, he sounds like a maniac. Why would anyone listen to this guy?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just my rant.
Yeah. You need that too sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, either they're looking for entertainment,
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of those guys, they're more putting out entertainment than, let's say, information.
Yeah.
Or the dumb or very, very new and young guys, they actually believe it. But they probably, in a quick amount of time, they hopefully see that it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. They're in a way, they're entertaining. I think a lot of people would think, the guy I was joking, people would probably get a kick at him and think he's funny. See, I find him very irritating, but I could see where some people would just be hysterically laughing and thinking this guy's hilarious because he makes faces. I mean, nobody with, who's mature or who is intelligent could handle this guy. But young guys who like to be entertained and want to laugh, to them it's like watching a cartoon. They get a kick at it. So I totally agree with that. I mean, I've had people say with my videos are just straight information videos where I just look in the camera and talk, and people say, Jerry, why don't you make it more entertaining? Bring in a couple of girls, maybe have some animations and bells and whistles and stuff. I said, wait a minute, I'm not trying to put on a variety show here. I said, I'm just trying to present solid, evidence-based information. I'm not trying to what do you want to start telling jokes? And so, and I do try and tell jokes whenever it fits in.
You do, yeah.
My thing is to try and give information. So again, like you say, there's two categories. One is what you're looking at for information, like somebody would watch yours. Not that it's not entertaining either, but and then you have the ones that have no information, but they're kind of funny. So those are the two. I totally agree.
Yeah, and I also say that because I don't want to mention that guy because he's dead, but but for sure you know him. But one of those entertainment guys, bodybuilders, I knew people that never stepped in a gym or they don't train, they don't eat like a bodybuilder, but still watch his videos because they got entertained.
Yeah, he was fascinating to watch. I know. I remember the first time I watched that guy, I was repelled by him, because he was constantly cursing every sentence. And I said, who would look at this guy? Then I looked at his numbers. He had like hundreds of thousands and, million views. I'm saying, who are these people watching them? And I started to ask the guys in the gym that were like closer to me. I said, do you want? They said, are you kidding me? I wouldn't want. I'm thinking, everybody says they don't like this guy. And then it suddenly dawned on me. I started to think to myself, now this guy had those gigantic arms. Yeah. And I used to say to myself, if I was 14 years of age and they had the internet back then, which they didn't, would I look at this guy? And I said, hell yeah. Because I was impressed by guys with big arms, big, and he acts like a street guy, like a tough guy, I said, hell yeah, I would have watched that guy. And sure enough, I happened to catch one of his videos. Somebody actually sent it to me, where he was talking about who his viewers are. And he said the vast majority of his viewers were between 14 and 18 years of old. Mystery solved. That's how many, the kids love him. They loved him because, again, he had that street swagger and the big giant. I mean, he had arms that were like, they didn't look real. They weren't real, but that's besides them. I mean, they were gigantic.
Yeah, I think it was like watching a real-time cartoon for those kids.
Very good way to put it. Yeah. It was like a human. He was like a human animation. Seriously. I mean, I didn't know the guy. I met him once or twice. He seemed like a nice guy. I felt bad when he passed away, but but like you say, he actually did give good information at times.
He did.
I'm not going to say that he was like the other guys where it was just garbage. Yeah. Some of his stuff was actually very good. And to his credit, he would sometimes give little lectures because he knew that most of his viewers were young people. So he'd say stuff like, look, if you're not going to compete at a high level in bodybuilding, don't take drugs. Yeah. Don't take drugs. He'd admit that he used them and, and this and that. But he says there's no real reason to take all these drugs if you're not going to compete. And I got to credit to him. That was nice of him to say that because these kids looked up to him. I don't know if they listened to him because they'll look at him and say, well, that's how he got so big. He took the drug. Well, no, it was a little bit more than just drugs that gave him that look. I'm not going to go into it, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But the point is that, like I say, I'm not going to say he was all bad. But again, to an adult or somebody with a brain, I don't like people that, that don't have any, I hate to say it, class, where they're constantly cursing. To me, that's a turnoff. I don't like that.
Yeah, me too.
If you do an occasional curse word, like you say something like, you say to me, well, this supplement for sleep, does it really work? And I say something like, well, it's bullshit. That's acceptable. That's minor. That's, I could say it better than that. And you notice I didn't say it like that. But the point is,
you didn't,
But that would be passably acceptable because I'm not overdoing it. But if I were to say that every sentence, then it gets wearing, and then the person with the brain says, I can't take this guy.
Yeah. And exactly like you said, I think he did put out some good stuff. I loved his videos with Rick Drayson. I think they were friends.
Yeah, very good.
The videos where he was on Rick's channel, he actually more talked like an adult and stuff. So
that's right.
I think he really purposely talked like that on his videos on that channel, on his personal channel, because I think he knew that, his viewers are kids.
Yeah.
So they want to be entertained all the time and they want to hear stuff like this. Yeah. So they're not adults. They're not people,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll let you know a little secret. I'm not going to answer it. Who's calling? Hold on. Oh, who is it? Oh, no. I'm not going to answer. Anyway, it's a spam call. Anyway, the thing is, I get it all the time. A guy who did know him well told me that he developed what he called a persona. In other words, after doing those videos on his own, he began to notice that when he adopted this kind of street swagger, tough guy thing, and cursed and was the bad boy type, that it really attracted the young guys who looked up to that. So what I'm trying to say is that was his act. He wasn't like that off camera. In other words, and I did see him in the gym. He'd go to the same gym as me sometimes. He never acted like that in the gym. People would go up to him. He didn't curse. He was a perfect gentleman. He seemed like a nice guy, like I said. This was a persona that he used in the videos because he was selling himself, selling his company, and he was playing to the audience, so to speak. So, it was just basically an act. It's like an actor playing a role in a movie. That's what he did. Yeah.
And I also think that he was really open about that. Yeah.
Oh, he was.
Because I think he was actually intelligent. He was a smart guy. He was a smart guy.
He really was. I don't know how much of what he said was the truth, but he seemed to do very well financially. He had a company going. He would feature his homes in some of his videos. He'd do little tours of his homes. Man, the guy lived really good. He had these fancy cars he drove.
Yeah,
you can't be stupid and accumulate all that stuff. He definitely was smart. He just enjoyed playing the role. That's the best way I could put it. He really enjoyed it. It's a shame that the guy died. I felt bad about it.
Yeah, I felt bad about that too because he was like a reality TV guy, on YouTube.
Exactly. Yeah. To say that's a good analogy because people don't realize reality TV is anything but.
It's not reality.
I remember the show called, what was that original one? Survivor. The show Survivor?
Yeah.
I watched the first and second seasons, and I said, wow, this is a really interesting show. They got to survive, and they got to do all these tests and this and that, And then by the third season, it turns out that it was exposed that it was a completely fake show, that the contestants were given food off camera. If the stunts they did not go well, they'd have a professional stuntman or stunt woman do it on camera. You know what I mean? It was completely staged. And I was just so angry. I said, my God, they deceived me. I felt like somebody had stolen from me almost. And I said, I will never watch that show again. And then there was a show I used to like called America's Greatest, what was it called? No, not America. America's Got Talent. They had these shows. I think they might even have in Germany, but Anyway,
Yeah.
amateur people go up and, you know, they sing or dance, tell jokes to try and get win like $1 million or something like that, you know. So I used to enjoy that show because it was funny because some of the people, they had something called the Dunning-Kruger Effect, I think, where people would go up and the guy would say, so, you know, the panel of judges, the head judge would say, so are you a really talented person? The guy would say, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. People tell me I'm star quality. I'm like ready to hit the top. I'm ready to, you know, be famous. So the guy's, okay, go ahead and sing. And the guy would sing and he'd sing like, and then they hit the buzzer and the guy, and they say, get off the stage. And the thing is, well, and I thought that was hilarious because all these people really believe it's like a bodybuilder who looks in the mirror and looks at him and says, well, I'm ready for Mr. Olympia. You know, everybody looks at me, looks like crap. Only he thinks he looks like Mr. Olympia. I've seen this 1,000,000 times over the years, right? So what happened was I met this young woman at the gym, very friendly woman, you know, and when I met her, she kind of looked like what they call a nerd here. And she had like glasses, you know, not an ugly girl, but, you know, not when you look at twice. And she happened to mention, she came up to me one day and, you know, she was introduced to me by a friend. And she was a nice person, so I talked to her a little bit. And she came up to me one day. She says, you know, I'm going to be on America's Got Talent. I said, oh, great, I'll watch you. So I watched her. And when she comes out, I almost fell out of my chair because she's wearing an evening dress. And now she's gorgeous. I mean, she had her hair done. She had makeup on. And I was rubbing my eyes. This is the same woman in the gym? I had to, like, do a double take. I couldn't believe how pretty she was. So she's wearing this nice evening dress. And then I got the biggest shock of all. They said, what are you going to do? She says, well, I'm going to sing. She starts to sing opera. I'm telling you, Deniz, this woman had a voice like that, like you wouldn't believe. A beautiful voice. I mean, I'm talking real talent here, right? As she's singing, she starts, I'm looking, what is she doing? She starts to strip. She starts to take, see, what I didn't know is she competes in women's figure contests also. I didn't know that. She stripped down to her bathing suit, kind of a sexy bikini, but she never stopped singing. The whole time she was singing and really good while, you know, stripping down to a bikini. So that, you know, the judges said, oh, very good, you know, and they tell you you did well. And so then I see her in the gym about a week later, and I say, well, are you going on to the finals? They seem to like. She says, no, they told me not to come back. I said, what? I said, you did great. I don't get it. She says, well, you know how I stripped off the dress? I said, yeah. She says, they told me to do that. That wasn't my idea. They thought that it would be nice for the TV audience, and they thought it'd be kind of interesting, kind of little kinky stuff, you know. But I did it, and there was so many complaints about it that they basically fired me. I said, let me get this straight. They told you to do that, the producers, and when you did it, they fired you? She says, yes. And I looked at her. I said, you know, I don't know you very well. I said to her, but I'm telling you, I'm looking you right in the eye. I will never watch, because of what they did to you, as far as I'm concerned, they're just another phony reality show. I will never watch that show again, and I never have, because you know, that was a terrible thing to do to her. Remember, if it was her idea, that would be one thing. But they told her to do that, and then they punished her for it. That was terrible. And this girl, by the way, I saw her once after that with makeup on. This girl looked like a movie star. I can't believe it. You know, the difference in when she fixes herself up. Because when I first went to the gym, she had no makeup and glasses. I mean, you wouldn't look at it. But you know, I haven't seen her in years. But I mean, that was a terrible thing to do. So I don't watch. My point is, I know this is a long-winded. I don't watch any reality shows. Sometimes I'm not sure of a TV show, and I'll turn on. As soon as I realize it's reality, it goes right off. I don't care what it's about. As far as I'm concerned, they're all fake. They're all phony. Every one of them. Every one of them. And I don't like that. Because you know what I look at it? I look at that as deception. I mean, they're deceiving viewers. And I don't do that in my newsletter. I never deceive anybody. I tell them the whole truth. And if I don't know something, I admit it. I never engage in deception. And I don't like somebody doing it to me in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. So if you know, that's the way I handle that.
Yeah. If, let's say, there's like a information entertainment ratio, those reality TV shows, they're completely on the entertainment side.
Exactly.
those reality TV shows, everybody who is in the media scene, they are more scripted than their actual reality. That's 100%. I had a friend I got to know in the gym, and he's not a dumb person, but there are a certain type of people, if you wouldn't know them personally, you would think that they are dumb persons. They are not very, and he was one of those guys, and he went to the casting, I don't know how, just to do his stuff at this big national TV show, and they wanted him to have, be a part of that, but the requirement was that he plays the role of a dumb, person who just, who's not, not portraying his real self, the reality, but just a really dumb person with bad jokes, cursing around, doing stuff, just making fun of himself, that people laugh at him, not laughing with him, but just off him.
Right.
And he gladly, he said no to that, but that was the requirement. If he wouldn't do that, you would not see him on TV, and you didn't.
Yeah.
The requirement was to be a scripted, dumb guy.
Right. Well, I experienced that myself many years ago. I was walking down the street with a friend of mine, and this guy comes up to us and he says, "Do you want to be on TV?" I said, "As what?" He says, "We have a dating show." I said, what do you mean dating show? He says, "Well," he says, you take you are hooked up with a woman, and you take her on the date, and we film it, and I said, "That's it?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "We pay for the date too." I said, "Gee, it sounds pretty good to me." Okay. So I went to the studio, and to me, it was stupid right from the start. So, they interviewed me, behind a curtain or something like that. And I didn't take it seriously. I told jokes, and they liked me. And they said, "Okay, we're going to put you on the show." So they had me, they didn't have computers back then. They had me look at a bunch of, it was on a screen, but it wasn't on the internet or anything. They had me choose some women. I had to choose 3, hoping that one of them would go on the date. So I chose 3, and I called the first 2. Told me it wasn't anything personal. They said, "Well, I'm not interested in doing it," And I'm thinking, why are they in their database if they're not interested? And the second one told me she's married with 5 kids, and she doesn't know how her name came there. I said, "Oh, sorry to bother you." Then the third one, said, "Oh, okay," and this and that. So they were going to give me $75 to take out the woman. So I called back the producer, and I said, "All right, so how does this work?" He says, "What? I just take out the girl, and you have a crew follow me with the cameras?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "But I said, "Well, I don't get it. Why would anyone watch me go on a date? How is that interest to anybody?" He says, "Oh no." He says, "We look for conflict." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "In other words, we want you and the girl to curse at each other and fight and all this and that." I said, "What?" I said, "You're telling me that if it's a normal date where we get along, it doesn't get on TV?" He says, "Exactly." I said, "I'm not going to do this show. Here's your $75. I'm not going to make a fool of myself on national TV. I'm going to start arguing with some woman I don't know. No, I'm not going to do it." Well, who would do this? And I walked away, and I never did the show. Yeah. It was fake. See, it was a fake show. They wanted me to pick a fight, or she'd pick a fight with me, and then we'd be yelling at each other, and that's entertaining because people like conflict.
They like it. Yeah, they love it.
They want to see people fight, right? I wasn't going to do that. I'm not. It's not my thing. Some people, there are guys that would have done it just for the hell of it, just because they think it's fun. To yell at, curse at some woman. I'm not going to do that. I won't do it, and I never did it. I came back to 75 and never did.
Yeah, I think no serious, rational, intelligent guy would do it, but there are millions of people who would love to do it. Yeah.
Well, the show went on for a couple of years, so obviously, right? A lot of people did it. I remember they knew going in that they weren't going to get on TV. They were told this before the date, so they knew they were going to have to start up with each other. And I watched a couple of it. It was really ugly. I was very happy I didn't do the show. It was really ugly. I mean, it almost came to blows. I mean, where the men and the women were fighting and throwing things at each other. It was horrible. I don't know why anyone would get entertained by that.
Yeah.
But, to me, it was a terrible thing.
Yeah, and it's not much money, you know. The friend of mine, he would get, you know, let's say 50 or 100 euros, but
Yeah.
nothing much, you know, nothing that, you know, saves a life or something, you know, just.
Yeah. Well, with me, they only offered was $75 to pay the date, and you know, I mean, if they had offered maybe $50,000, I could have.
Yeah,
Then I would have been role playing. To me, it would be
yeah,
like being a movie. I say,
yeah,
okay, they want me to yell at the girl. I'll do it for 50 grand. Sure. I look at it like an actor in a movie. I don't really need it, but if they're paying me that much money, sure. But not for
yeah,
free. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do it.
yeah.
Uh,
That's the thing. Yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, you know, lots of people, they like to do that kind of stuff, and lots of people, you know, they love to watch those kind of stuff.
oh, yeah,
So that's
yeah,
that for those guys, that's a win-win situation.
yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
thing.
Right.
So
Well,
why not?
if you ever study screenwriting, one of the basic rules in any screenplay is you have to have some degree of conflict.
Yeah,
You have to have some degree, or let's say a barrier that the hero or the protagonist has to achieve, by the end of the story. Otherwise, it's not a script. It gets rejected. If it's just a pleasant script where everybody's happy and it doesn't go anywhere, you have to have. I know the conflict in some scripts could be greater than others, like Star Wars, where there's a lot of but it has to have some degree of conflict. Or let's say two people that are in love and they can't be together. That's a form of conflict. If it doesn't have conflict, there's no screenplay. And because that's the way the human brain works, people aren't interested. They have to be intrigued. And people are intrigued by conflict. Oh, what's he going to do? Oh, no. They get, otherwise they get bored. They get bored. So that's the way it
yeah.
works.
Every Oscar movie I can think of has some kind of conflict in them.
Yeah.
Everyone.
You'll never see one without it. And even the movies you think have no conflict,
They
if
have,
you
they have,
if
yeah,
if you watch it again or think about it, you'll see that it always had some form of conflict. Every single, otherwise it's not a script. That's
yeah,
the rule. When I was writing scripts, I would always, the first thing I think about is how do I create a conflict here? That's the very first thing I think about. And if I couldn't come up with one, I'd have to do another topic, another scenario. Yeah,
yeah. Crazy.
yeah,
But that's how it is.
that's how it is.
So to sum it up, sleep is very important. Important. Don't neglect it. Seven
Right.
to 8 hours is fine. I think people will love this episode. I really enjoyed it. I think every important thing about sleep, you hear it in this video. We also talked about Arnold. We talked even about acting. So we came a long way from sleep to
I know.
acting and dating shows. So that's a crazy thing. I
Well,
would never think that the interview, would
see,
end up.
here's what we did here. If you think about it, we started out with a straight informative video, and
Yeah,
then we
and
added
we
some entertainment. See?
entertainment. Yeah,
So this video actually has both. It has information and entertainment.
yeah,
It has the perfect formula for a
yeah,
for a video. See what I'm saying? But I also want to mention something about my newsletter.
yeah.
Applied Metabolics. I've had it for 5 years, and I tell you, it's like 40 to 50 pages every month. Anyone who really wants to know in-depth information about nutrition, supplements, I'm going to have an update on sleep myself. I'm going to write about all the new sleep science, uh, ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, women's health and fitness. All of this is covered. Like I say, 40, 50, it's like an ebook every month. And when they join, I send them an invitation to join my private Facebook, Applied Metabolics Facebook page. Every day I post new information about new studies pertaining to exercise, health, fitness, and this and that. And also I answer short questions submitted to me only by subscribers. Because I have a limited amount of time. I get questions every day.
Yeah.
People go to my website, and they're not even subscribers, but my subscribers come first. I always answer their questions. I won't answer the unsolicited questions. It's not fair. It's not fair to the subscribers. So in other words, I look at that as a kind of a bonus for the subscription, because there's not a lot of digital newsletters where the guys who publish it will actually answer your questions personally. They just don't do that. I think I'm the only guy who actually does that. So that's like a bonus for the subscribers. Yeah.
So I will put in the link into this exact scene, I will put the link into the description and comments. It's appliedmetabolics.com.
Exactly.
You subscribe for only $10 a month. It's nothing.
Right.
And I really know that it's good. I have a buddy who is a viewer of mine for years, and he loves the newsletter.
Right.
So he only tells me good stuff about it, and he also mentioned that you answer fans if a subscriber asks them. So
that's right. Yeah.
I think for any type of guy, that's an interesting newsletter. And also follow Jerry on Facebook, on Instagram. I will put out all the all your social media. I think you're active there too. You even have a YouTube channel. Are you active there too? I can put that out here.
Every Tuesday I put a new video on my YouTube channel, Jerry Brainum channel. Yeah, every Tuesday there's a new video. And I also want to point out that my news is very practical. In other words, it's not like a textbook. The information I present could be used right away by people that do it, whether it's to improve their training, muscle gains, health, prevent disease, whatever, help, psychologically, or, increase their thinking ability. There's something in there that you will learn. I don't care what your level of education. Somebody every month, I guarantee it, will learn something new in my newsletter. I absolutely guarantee that.
Yeah. And you don't even have to be into bodybuilding.
No.
No.
I'll give you an example of that. I think in the next issue, I'm going to be doing an article about this COVID-19 pandemic thing, where you've heard a lot of conflicting or seen a lot of conflicting videos and articles about nutrition exercise in relation to COVID-19 prevention and treatment. But my article is going to tell the truth once and for all about what things that really help with that, preventing that disease, where this could save somebody's life. This is like light, and as you say, this has nothing to do with bodybuilding. Although bodybuilders could get COVID-19. I mean, this is for anybody. Anybody on who's that's just one example. But I have articles in there that you don't have to be into bodybuilding at all. All you have to do is interested in your health and staying younger longer. That kind of stuff will interest I think a large majority of people.
Yeah. So check that out, guys. I will put it up. And also really thank you for your time. I think you really did a great combination of, like you said, information and entertainment. I hope people will enjoy it at least as much as we did.
Yeah.
Also follow me on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, Deniz WORLDOFBB. Obviously people will see my links also down there. So subscribe to Jerry's YouTube channel, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hopefully you will also check out his newsletter. And hopefully this won't be the last video we did. So be updated, guys.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Deniz.
Great.
Okay.
I love it too. I always learn the most with the interviews I do with you.
Thank you.
I learned so much with the sleep stuff and a lot. And immune system and stuff, I really learn a lot. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to do it. Take care, my friend.